Hey guys, it's Baileywiki. Happy New Year! It's the first Monday of 2025, which means it's time to show off the latest release. This is available now, and wait until you see some of the stuff in here. To start things off, we have a new function from MassEdit called bags. Bags basically replace the old favorites system with something I think infinitely more helpful. Basically, you can put any collection of things into bags, like camping stuff or wilderness stuff. But you can also make smart bags that automatically search all of your assets. And you can even make bags for your players. If you're curious, I've got a short and sweet tutorial that just hit today, which I'll link in the description. Next up, Foundry Basic members are getting a large expansion of the diorama tile system, now giving you desolate and desert terrains. But these are usable in tons of ways because they mostly are missing vegetation, which means you can add trees and bushes to these and make really anything you want. Of course, there are lots of new scenes and scene templates to get you started and extra assets, prefabs, and audio to complement everything. Foundry Advanced members, oh my gosh, check this out. Tons of new buildings for our fantasy GMs. But for you sci-fi fans, get a load of this. I mean, whoa, these things are huge. We've got new fantasy and sci-fi scenes to go with all this, and we're also using a new file saving structure that's going to cut down the module size by at least 50% and should increase performance in game by maybe the same amount. Eventually, we're just starting to kind of migrate things over. We don't have official numbers yet, but it's pretty substantial. And of course, Dungeon Draft tiers get all the assets that went into this release, including all the new diorama tiles, which we call terrain patches, and all the other tile assets. So with that, jump ahead in the timestamps to check out the parts you're interested in, and let's get into it. Okay, so in terms of where to find the new content, as usual, update all of your Baileywiki modules, the most important ones being towns and the 3D module if you are a premium subscriber. And for your new scenes, if you just type in 2D, you get all of your 2D scenes here at the top, all the new ones. And then if you type in 3D, you will find your 3D scenes here, and you'll have the new ones at the top there. You will then, after you do all that, you will also open up your MassEdit browser and you can come into the placeables. And by the way, MassEdit's got a bunch of changes, which I'll walk you through today as well. But you're going to want to just search for new, and it will come up with all the new stuff from this release. Not only the prefabs, but also all of the tiles and everything else that came with the release. And there's quite a few of those. I'll just walk you through some of the changes with MassEdit. Some things you'll notice is you actually have more options here at the top. So in the options that you don't use as often, you can push here behind this drop-down menu. You can configure that here on this gear. You can just say which submenus and tabs do you want to show up under the drop-down. You can also toggle on or off persistent search. I like it on. That means if I search for something like campfire, and I search and I'm accidentally searching in the lights, if I jump over here, it'll keep my search campfire in place. Or if I want to say, okay, let me see everything that has to do with campfire, I can go here and see all of that. You'll also notice you have your scene shortcuts here. It used to be you have to create a separate, open up a separate browser to see your scene options. But in this case, you can have all of them saved here. This is like where you've seen me drag in a black background with reactive lighting. That's what I want most of my scenes to use. I will just drag that here from here to the scene, and it will give the scene itself under the scene configurations all of these settings that I've pre-saved for it. And then the last thing is you'll see bags. Bags I'm really excited about. You're seeing a whole tutorial come out today on bags. It'll be a relatively short one because I think it's pretty much makes intuitive sense, but it's replaced the favorites tag or tab up top. Instead, you're making bags, and these bags can be things that you have specifically made. So like here's a bag that has magical spawns, so like an instant fortress, right? And you can actually give these bags to players. So I can drag my instant fortress out here, or a player can, and they've got an instant, 2-story fortress, just like the spell from D&D, and they can use that to drop into a battlefield. But here, like they also have a mansion door, right? And this leads to the magical mansion, right? And it's got some components to it, and the door itself, when you open it up, the light comes pouring in from the other dimension from where the mansion is. and it's got a working teleport tile. But these are things that you can do now and give to players because of bags. Once you create the bag, which you can just drop things into it from other, these are all just uh, uh, entities or brushes or anything that you've built with Mass Edit, you can now drop into the bag and give them something very fixed to work with. Or you can have the bag be like what I call an auto bag. So maybe I want to give my players access to this auto bag, or maybe I just want to use it. I want to have an auto bag for kitchen clutter, right? And so this is everything that I would clutter up a kitchen table with, right? These are all brushes that I've made, but if you go into this bag, you can say what it wants to look for. So this auto bag, which I've named, will just look for these keywords and it'll exclude these keywords. You can also have it look in your virtual directory. So if I click that on, you can see all of a sudden my inventory in my bag went up quite a bit because now I'm looking at every single pot, pan, runner, and everything else, not just the brushes. But you'll see also I have all this Tom Carto stuff installed, so I can get all of his cutlery, spoons, all the different food that he provides kind of intermixed with Baileywiki stuff. So this is like all the food I would ever need in this auto bag, right? So I'll just click that back off again. And that's how these things work. You can create a macro out of it. That's what lets you give access to your players. So once you create a macro, you can give permission to your macro. You can also automatically refresh. If you've made some changes to your library, you can refresh and have it reflect all those changes. But really super handy stuff. And you can see that there's other bags available. So if I just search for bag, I have campsite stuff, right? So this might be things that I use to build a campsite. Maybe this is what I give my players, right? They can set up torches and a campfire, set their campsite up in a way that they want to. Here's seating and sleeping bags, right? But I also have put all of our diorama stuff in one place too. So maybe I want to decorate a desert scene. Well, I've got everything that I need to be able to do that, right? Including the tile spawner for the diorama. So I can drag this out and then I can drag out caves and rocks. And, these are brushes. So if I just add it to a brush, now I can add rocks randomly to a scene, right? I've got all my cactuses, all of my desolate bushes, right? And they all come with that kind of color. So you can really quickly come in here and, add some foliage to a scene, right? This is perfect. Look at that. In 2 seconds, I've got a fully serviceable map for an adventure that I might want to play. So definitely check out the tutorial on the new bag feature. Okay, so let's jump into the inventory scenes first. That's where we just keep all of the new assets. You can see them in one place. We're going to have start with all the diorama tiles. These are now dirt or desolate named, and just these can scale up really, really large, but these are all just maps in and of themselves. So this can be, a very large mountain map if you like it to be, and they all merge with each other like you're used to seeing in the past. And they also work with the other diorama tiles. So you can have a mix of this kind of cracked earth and desolate. Now, there's quite a few of these in different varieties. Now, in terms of how they're offered, again, this is just a few of them. We've got more in other inventory scenes. Here's just another collection, right? These have like canyons. We've got caves, lots of different clearings, right? So here's some caves that have, ivy coming off the top of them. Here's the last piece of the kind of desolate terrains. Again, lots of stuff to pick from and be able to mix and match. You also have desolate forests. These are going to be a little bit lower saturation. And where all of these are located, if you open up your Mass Edit, is you've got these diorama tile spawners. So this is the desolate diorama uh, tile. So if I just click this and drag it out, I can make it bigger or smaller. It's got audio for day and night already around it. You just throw it into your scene, and it's got a few different attributes. If you double click it, you can randomize it. You can also just go next or previous. You can deactivate this tile if you don't want it to have that behavior anymore. And then it also has the ability, it has a built-in adjuster. So if I select that tile and I select my Token Magic Effects edit, I'll see it's got an adjustment filter on it. And this is where you can use this to really change a lot about its look. So let's say I don't want it to be so brown. I can drop its saturation and I can make it like a different color entirely. In fact, I can say like, hey, maybe I want this to be a little bit more blue in hue. You can do that and make these fine-tune adjustments here. You've got also brightness and contrast. If I make brightness like 2, you can see it really washes it out, and that could be what you're looking for. If you want it to be brighter but not washed out, you can increase the gamma, right? So that gives it a brighter texture, but doesn't wash it out from a light perspective, right? And you can play around with the rest of these features, right? This makes it look like a brighter day with some deeper shadows, that kind of thing. So it does have an adjustment filter already built into it. If you want to add an adjustment filter manually, I'll show you this in a second, but we've got a new filter macro that just includes all of the Baileywiki Token Magic effects, and you can find the adjustment filter here on the bottom, and you can search for them by typing things in. Like you can have things that swing in horizontal or vertical capacity, all the stuff that you're used to seeing. In fact, we're going to have a tutorial come out covering that here pretty soon. Other things that have come out are dead bushes. These also come in colorable varieties. So these are really great. If you add a drop shadow, you can drop them into those desolate terrain tiles, and you can add bushes and shrubbery. You can also add just green bushes and green trees. If you'd like to just use the terrain itself, but be able to add vegetation to it. You've got all of these boulders that are available, but you have other boulders as well. You have, and they're available in brushes. So you have desert, which you can see here. You also have just regular gray boulders and then mossy boulders as well. And you'll see those here in just a second. I've also got all these new dead trees. These trees right here are prefabs. So if I select, get those out of the way. If I select this tree, there's a tree canopy. There's also a trunk. And then there's also another tile underneath it, which is the shadow of the tree. And if your players walk underneath the tree, the shadow will still cast over them, even though the tree itself will occlude. These trees are just without all of the extra pieces. They just have some drop shadows applied to the canopy so you can span them around. They are matte enabled. So if we look up our dead trees, you can see like this one, if I drag it out here, and if I double click it, or sorry, double right click it, it will randomize all the components, including the top of the tree. So you can use that to create some variability with your trees. We also have the desolate brown bushes. These are actually colorable tiles. If I drag it around, you can see it started off red. It just has a Token Magic Effects color tint already applied that helps it go with the rest of this desolate release. It's just automatically colored that way. But of course, because they're colorable, you can randomize these and make these any color you want. Here's some of the macros that I mentioned. We have a random overlay dirt path and also a canyon path. So what these look like is if you look in nuts and bolts and you look up canyon, for example, and you select that, I'll just show you here. If I select these trees and then I execute the canyon macro, if I execute it enough, it'll take a canyon and superimpose it over the tree itself. So here's like over the map or whatever tile you're on. So you can see like a canyon is running through this particular map. If it's in roughly the right spot and you want to make some adjustments, you go to this one, adjust the canyon accordingly. So we might try to translate this one direction or another. And now we've got a canyon running right through the middle of our tree. So that's how you use that. The dirt path works in the same way. So if we delete the canyon and we look up our dirt path, and these are just so you can take really any of these diorama tiles and apply something like a path to them. So let's keep going until we select that. So here we've got a dirt path as a starting point. Let's edit that a little bit. We'll shrink down its scale. And you can see it's a pretty believable path through the forest. For something that's quick and fast, This is a way that you can do it. You can, of course, rotate it, have it going different directions, but it's tileable, so it really lays across, and then you can move it around from there. And of course, we have the Baileywiki effects macro, which is now a lot of our overlays just automatically put into a single list, and you can just really quickly select them. You'll find you'll use the drop shadow, short and tall a lot, but all of these other ones you can play around with. You know, if you want your trees to sway, if you want to add a blood-soaked effect to something, right? You can keep randomizing it. Probably doesn't go well on this particular background, but you can kind of see. You can also just delete all the effects on a particular thing, right? If you want to show that you've got like a vehicle that's moving, this will automatically apply like a moving effect to it. You can also apply the adjustment filter. We have some new audio loops. These are available for the kind of deserty type of stuff that we have coming out this month. There's also some sound effects that are not on here that I created, just some general desert sound effects like walking in sand or tumbleweeds blowing, hawks screeching in the distance. So you can go and play around with those as well. You can find them all just by going to your ambient sounds tab and using the new tag. They'll all be here in this list here. I don't have them listed just yet. We also have additional grassy clearings. These are just so helpful that I wanted to add some more. This one's kind of up on a raised area, but these are just like super helpful just to have more grassy options. This one has flowers on it, which because they're red means they're colorable. So we could make these like purple in color, and you can have some story that you're telling with purple flowers, for example. We also have these new fallen logs in log piles. You can find them just by searching log or logs in mass edit. All of your bushes that are not colorable, these are just come hard coded as green. These go really well with this kind of artwork, right? So these can all go in maps like this very easily. Kind of a major change from the last time too is I adjusted the artwork of the diorama tiles. It's now a little bit more, it might be subtle to you, but it's a little bit more kind of illustration type of application to it. So you'll see that the artwork itself looks better at higher scales. So you might see that it looks like a little bit more painted. And I retroactively did that. So all of the entire last release also has the new kind of art filter applied to it. Here's all of your different boulders and mossy boulders. These resize and stack up really well with each other. Apply like a drop shadow to them in the brush, and you've got a really easy way to build like piles of rocks, or just put a boulder somewhere as a tactical interest point. Here's some of the new diorama grassy tor hills. So there's just more options for, I think, pieces that make interesting maps together. So if you want to have like elevation, you can butt these things up to each other and just have more interesting maps. Lots of open spaces to either skirmish or put down a house or dungeon or ruins or other things that you might find interesting. We also have grassy paths. So these go really well, just kind of connecting them together. We'll show you here in a second a scene that uses a lot of them. You generally want your shadows to go from like left to down if you care about stuff like that. So you have a certain amount of adjusting that you can do before it starts to look weird. But these all go really well with the other diorama tiles. And yeah, I just really like it. If you just want to have a map that's like a path, like this is your map, and you can have a little campsite here. But if you have a battle along a path, these are really easy to pull up and quickly make a pretty nice map out of. And of course, we have the unlimited terrain tiles, right? So these are very large tiles that you can zoom in a lot. You can scale them up. They're meant to work with the unlimited terrain spawner. So you can zoom in on just like one part of this map, and you have a starting map that you can work with, right? And there's 4 of these, and you can find them just by looking up the spawner tile. And here we've got the desolate dirt spawner. So if we drag this out, it will attempt to fill the entire space. We'll pick just one of these, and we've got our starting point for a map. At that point, you can just, once you're on your token layer, double click it and adjust its position. And you might need to zoom in on some of these, right? This right here is a nice, good starting map, right? So I've got this like high wall that maybe create some tactical interest in this map. I can rotate this around and kind of put that wall where I want it to be. And now I've just got a great starting map that gives me some inspiration on something I might build. And it also lets me build out lots of different areas in a particular place that just use, these different terrain. So this one's got some more forest components built into it, some big clearings where you can have skirmishes. There's potential paths coming through here. So lots of different things. These are tileable, so you can really pan and zoom wherever you want on this map, and it'll create something unique for you. Moving on to scene templates. Here's a diorama template just with a single tile. You can double click this tile to randomize it. You can double right click it to bring up the menu for randomization. It also comes with this just randomization tile. So for example, here's a nice hill. Maybe if I duplicate this and move it over here, and I'll stick this one behind the first one. Maybe I can add multiple of these, and then I want to randomize all of them. This will randomize everything on the scene, right? Or I can just, again, double left click any one of these to randomize until I've got something that I want to work with. It also comes with, if you didn't hear it, some ambient audio for day and night. Then I have the 5x diorama template. By the way, all of these template scenes are very large. They're much larger than what you see here. In case you do want to add more diorama tiles around the edges, or you want to make a long scene, that kind of thing, it already has some dimensionality that you can add more to it. And of course, you can always grab these, hit Shift D, and resize them in different ways really quickly. But this one works in the same way. You can randomize everything just by double clicking this. If you need to delete all of these map nodes, you just click this little trash can up in the corner, and that will delete everything that is a map node, including all this stuff here as well. You can also just grab this, delete it, and it'll delete these components around it. Now, these scenes do not use the dioramas. They use just the randomization template. So you can, like, right off the bat, we've got kind of a cool map here that we can use as a starting point, but you can change the overlay to something else, right? So it's in the desolate dirt terrains where you can find your alternatives to that. The 2x version is just a much larger version than the one you saw before. But yeah, this is the outline of this particular map, right? And you can see its relative scale here when I drag a player out. All right, just jumping through some of the sample maps. This was made with diorama tiles. You can see the canyon where you've got the paths leading across the footbridge. Just to show you how you can pull these things together into a single map. Forest cave just shows how you can like put trees around a particular diorama to make it look like you're in the middle of a forest. This one is maybe a cave where there's some adventuring equipment laid out outside. Of course, you can pick up these tiles and change it to anything else. This shows you how you can use the path assets all linked together to create a path through the woods. These are other diorama forest tiles around the path tiles, but you can see they all kind of link up. You've got this inn kind of tavern partway through. And you can also see I've been playing around with the adjustment filters. So if you click this open, you can see that it's got an adjustment filter applied just to give it a different look, right? So I took down the amount of color in this and I gave it more of a kind of an austere look. This is using that path overlay to come right through a canyon where you've got some raised areas on both sides, ideal for some kind of skirmish. Desert encampment is a nice vibe to it. Just showing you how you can set up campsites that would be in the desert, if you will. This is where you might let your players pull out their camping bag and set up a camp maybe in this area. Also looks great in daytime. This just comes by default at night. The Hangman's Rock. So A little bit harder to see at night here, but you can see as we get closer to this rock, we've got some skeletons kind of hanging here. We've got some lamps that are kind of swaying subtly and blowing in the breeze. You can bring up the lights on this map. We've got these like uh, black birds flying around, presumably smelling the rot coming off of the Hangman's Rock. Perfectly serviceable in day and night. The Desert Oasis just uses a pond overlay with a bunch of the palm trees from former releases to build out an oasis that players can discover and walk around and maybe have NPCs gathered around here. But you can turn the lights down and it looks well lit at night. Just shows you how to use some of the desert assets to create something larger. Stone Pillar uses a lot of the same things we've been talking about. Path leading up to the stone circle. The stone circle has a few rocks stacked on top of each other to create what's essentially a pillar. Your players can, walk under the top rock and it occludes slightly, so maybe you have something to discover there. This is the ritual circle. So it uses some of the other pieces. They presumably walk out of some of these cave areas into this ritual circle where they've got, these stone, maybe ancient gods or demons of different varieties. You've got some skulls bunched up around this central altar. You got some of your trees here. They cast a good overlay effect as your players walk underneath them, and good for hiding bad guys as well. And again, you can adjust the lighting on all these sites or all these scenes to make them day or night. Here's the Darkwood Ruins. So again, playing around with the amount of color on each of these, but this is a forest and a ruin within the forest where your players can discover these sort of like interesting metallic braziers that look maybe like there's some technology that was here in the past. You've got some of these like overhead tiles covering them up, and it's just an explorable map where you can have different stories that you're telling. This happens to have some settlement going on here, so your players can climb their way up to the tops of these things and find some of these huts. You can remove these huts, swap them out for other kinds of things. Spawner maps use our spawner tiles here. This one's got a canyon running through the middle, and then this wrecked airship. You see, smoking ruins of engines and things that are bolted onto this ship. But the ship also has an interior, so your players can explore. This is multiple levels of the bow and the stern that your players can go in and explore. You can put things in here, hide bad guys, that kind of thing. This just shows you how you can use some of these components. Right here's just a wing from another release, just laid out in a way that looks like there was a crash here. Some of these are overhead tiles. Right, this is the shipwreck release. Your border checkpoint is kind of your obligatory checkpoint through some kind of choke point terrain. You've got these signal fires here that you can turn off and on. You've got some ballista kind of pointing down into the gully here, but it just shows you how to use some of these pieces, right? So we've got some weapon racks and some barriers, and this just helps you change the terrain a little bit depending on what story you want to tell. Really simple desert river crossing. This uses the river overlay to put this overlay on top of the map. Our trees are slightly swaying. You've got different ways to cross this river and some sound effects there to help it along. And lastly, the mysterious desert totem. This one is displayable at night or at day. You've got this kind of creepy fog effect, and then you've got this totem here that, who knows what it is, but that's your job to tell a story around it. But again, you can turn it on day and night. Maybe at night the effect takes place, interact with it in some way. That's it for the 2D release. We've got basically hundreds of new tiles, but tons of these diorama tiles that you can play with. I'm going to have a snowy release coming up next, so you guys can get looking forward to that. And then let me know if you'd like other kinds of terrains or biomes available in those tiles. I'm going to be releasing some more of those in the future to cover things like swamps, that kind of thing. But I hope you guys enjoyed the 2D release. Now for you advanced members, I'm going to hand it over to Swift to talk about the 3D stuff.
Hi guys, and Happy New Year! Swift here again to talk about the 3D side of this month's release. We've got some new maps, a big heap of new props, and we've been working on some back-end stuff that'll hopefully be improving the experience of using the 3D module, both this month and going forward. But I'll talk about that some more when we get to looking at the props. So let's start out with a little set of maps here that are linked together by a theme, in this case boats, starting here with the Sandy Seaside map. This one's one of our diorama style maps, and is, depending on your situation of course, a place for the party to head out to sea, or a part where they're arriving from the ocean. There's a couple of passages and elevated sections through the middle of the map here, and there's a couple of points of interest. There's a small campfire spot over here on one side of the map, a rune stone up high in the centre, on an area where you can climb up there, and then over on the far side there is some buried treasure using the sliding door sort of type here. So you can just click on the dirt and then click on the chest. Bit of interactivity there. And you can also reset it in the same way, since they are essentially just sliding doors. You can just click on those to reset that. But aside from that little bit of interactivity, it's just a nice and straightforward beach landing map. Simple but effective, I'd like to think. And we've got a couple of variations of it. Like this is the Sandy Seaside Night Landing version of the map. Same deal, of course, though the party have arrived at night. I've used a few lights here and there, just to kind of make things stand out a bit more. Like over here, this campsite is a little bit illuminated due to a light just above it. Same with this runestone here. And then over in the corner here, there's a light over the dig-upable treasure, though it's a little bit subtle. And of course, you can just sort of turn it off if you don't want that to stand out at all. Overall, quite like nighttime maps, just because they're quite atmospheric and give a good opportunity for use of lights, like if the party have lights with them, for instance. Anyway, this is part of a little series of maps, so let's have a look at the next one. And this map is Ships at Sea, which, as you might imagine, involves these two boats meeting on the water. We've got some animated waves, the water here, and subtly animated boats bobbing up and down slowly. And then we've got, obviously, the snow to kind of make things a bit more atmospheric too. What's actually happening in this map will depend on the adventure you've got running, of course. Either it's some sort of attack, or maybe a meeting. The smaller boat is the same one that we just saw at the water landing map, so it could be that the adventurers are moving from a larger boat to a smaller one in order to approach a cove, or the reverse is happening. But either way, this is the kind of map that I think any waterborne adventure needs at least one of. So let's have a little look at the next one in this little series, which is the Smuggler's Den, which is a cozy set of caves with a nice hidden port, being presumably lived in by a gang of smugglers, or maybe the party themselves, with several rooms off the side of this main sort of cave chamber. Like we've got a presumably leader's room with maps and charts and books, and a hammock, of course. The sort of general meeting area here by the improvised dock, a barracks over to the side with more hammocks and a storage area, and then a prison as well, with a few interactable elements. For instance, this cage here is interactable with this lever that you can use to dunk it into the water. Always need a good mechanism for dunking things into the sea every now and then. And then this door here is actually two parts. The sort of rubble on the floor that is currently invisible, that we can see because we're the DM, and then the main door itself. This interacts with the cannon on this boat over here. So if we click on that, then what that'll do is switch between the two models on this door here. So we can still see it because we're the DM, but the sort of main one has gone transparent, and now the one on the floor has become visible to simulate the door being destroyed by cannon fire, of course. And then, just in case, there's a reset button over here, for resetting the cannon and the door that the DM can see. So that's for just sort of resetting the scene back up. So got a little bit of interactability there, and then just other than that, a nice big smuggler's base, I suppose, like a cove here. I think this one's my favourite out of this little collection of maps, though I'm always partial to the kind of place that you might imagine being turned into something of a home base, for the player party. How likely that actually is to happen, of course, depends on your adventure and your DMing style, but it's a map archetype I quite like. So let's have a look at the next map. And this is the Tavern by the Marketplace, which, as you can see, is a tavern by a marketplace. Nice and straightforward. We've got an area in the center of the city here, surrounded by buildings, a open-air market over here, and then the tavern itself. There's a decent amount of space inside the tavern and outside as well for encounters, so you could have encounters, well, fights, I suppose, in the bar or just outside. And then we've also got a back door leading out to this back alley here. This tavern is clearly a sort of quickly constructed one out of wood, so the kind of thing you might find in a larger frontier town, like for example one way out on an island, which might be near to a smuggler's cove, for a bit of a link to our other maps there. For this map we have a couple of variants for it. We've got this default one here, the sort of rainy city day. We've got the sunny variant of the Tavern in the Square, which is similar idea, just with the sun out. Things a little bit more brighter, exposure a little bit higher, light a little bit more yellow. And the nighttime version of the map, which is rather spookier. We've got sort of thicker fog in this one here, and then a more dark blue lighting with lower exposure. But with a little bit brighter lighting on the inside of the tavern here, just to be a little bit of contrast between the inside and the outside. So this is the perfect situation for some undead to munch around the corner sort of thing. That's the market in the square, though. Let's have a look at the next map. This one is another village map. In this case, a sort of forest village, though it's a bit more than that, as you can probably tell. We've got the floating particles on the wind, the green fog. It's very sort of fey looking as a place. In kind of a nice way. Often fey, elves, that sort of thing, get a bit of a bad rap, possibly deserved. But in this case, it just kind of looks like a reasonably whimsical sort of place in the forest, using some of our older structures here to create a bit of a town square. We've got this map here, which is a village square, a nice river, that sort of thing. And then there's a variant of this one, which is similar to the previous one, where we've got darker fog, more sort of dark blue sky. Still got the raising particles and all that sort of thing, but a kind of peaceful seeming night scene, I think, for this forest village. Another nice and simple map that I think could fit into quite a lot of different campaigns. The next one is quite a bit different, though. This is the Space Station map, which is one of the maps by Severo this month, starting out with a sign showing us the way to go to the various parts of the station. These lines on the ground are pretty cool, I think. They were just made with tiles, stretched out, placed on the ground, and then just coloured red, green, blue, and purple. Really simple way to get a pretty cool effect, just essentially drawing lines on anything. But anyway, this is quite a large sci-fi map, using some of our recent assets here. Split into various sections, like we've got the engineering, we've got the medical bay, got the habitation area, which looks pretty comfy, I think. The walkways are a bit extra, but hey. Some rooms off to the side, bunks and all that, and then, the kind of captain's area, complete with captain's quarters, because of course, every space station needs a conspicuously old-fashioned captain's quarters around with hardwood flooring. It's a rule. And then, of course, we've got the hangar and the landing pad here, using some of the ships from the 3D Canvas map-making pack, which is quite cool. Speaking of ships, we've got a couple of those this month in the sci-fi side of things. But we've also got a expansion of some of our fantasy stuff. So let's have a look at our props now. So the first set of props we'll have a quick look at today is an expansion for our city buildings set. You might remember these from a little bit ago. We had a couple of buildings and various props for a sort of slightly modern seeming city. Well, this is a rather hefty increase to the amount of buildings we have available, split into three sort of general types. At the back here, we've got what I'm calling decorative buildings, which is they don't have interiors. They're just essentially a shell, with the advantage then being that they're very efficient, very high performance. You can just use them to absolutely pad out city blocks, use them as background pieces, all that sort of thing, without having to worry about a scene getting too complex. We've got what I'm calling vacant buildings, which do have interiors, but don't have anything inside them, so that you'll be able to furnish them yourself. Like, see if we have a little look in there. So those will be for if you need a building, but for a very specific purpose, you can use one of these vacant type buildings, which are these ones in the middle here, to kind of fill in for whatever purpose you might have. And then we've got the prefab buildings, which are essentially the vacant buildings, but they have things in them. Like, for instance, down here we've got a carpenter's shop with a bit of a light in there. And I've got Targo out just to kind of demonstrate how they're supposed to be used. You just slap the clipping shader on them. So if I select Targo, drag him inside, the clipping shader cuts off the whole top of the building, which is a whole lot easier than how these buildings used to work, where they were made out of multiple pieces and you had to arrange them in very specific ways to get them to clip nicely. Now with this shader, it's just a one-step process. You just apply the shader, maybe you tweak it a little bit to make it look more how you like, and then you're done. You've got a building with an interior that works just fine. This is just a sort of quick update video, so I won't go into too much detail about all what's in here. But, I definitely recommend when you get the update to have a look at the inventory scenes, have a look around the building, see what you see if there's any ideas that you get or things you can think of. As ever with this sort of thing, I really appreciate opinions or questions or comments or that sort of thing down in the comments below or on our Discord relating to this. And particularly with regards to how they run in your scenes, since these buildings here are the first set of buildings using a new method for saving files, essentially. I don't want to get too technical or anything, but basically these should be a lot more efficient than our previous assets. I've been working on converting our old library of assets from an older file format to this sort of newer one, just to get the whole module size down and get it running more efficiently. But that's the kind of thing that we're going to have to pick at the background and then do all at once it's complete. But in the meantime, any new releases will be with this new, more efficient style. And so what I'd like to hear from the people who are using the 3D stuff is if you notice any increase in performance when you're using these new assets. Like, for example, if you create a city with these, let us know how it goes, depending on how you expected it would go. Anyway, that's the first set of props for this month. The second set mostly consists of a whole lot of spaceships with some extra stuff added onto the side there. This is another set of props that are using the new, more efficient method. So while this scene specifically is absolutely gigantic and has far too many ships in it, any scenes where you actually use these ships should be much more performant than you would expect. As to what we actually have here, we've got a bunch of different ships split into 5 different variants that are essentially just different colours. So, we've got the blue and gold, brown and red, green and purple, red and orange, black and blue, and then various different styles. So we've got fighters, bombers, heavy fighters, stealth fighters, cruisers, carriers, and then massive capital ships in the background here, and then station parts as well, like there's a warp gate, various different station pieces, and then a complete station as well. These props are a little bit odd though, because what I've done with them is I've scaled them roughly correctly. The theory being that you would be able to drop in one of these fighters into a normal scene and it would be about the size of a fighter. So you could put it in, say, a hangar or just landed somewhere and it would look correct. But that does mean that the larger ships, like the carriers and so on, are absolutely huge. So if you're doing like space-based stuff, what I actually recommend doing is setting them as tokens, like what I've done here. I've just got 3 character tokens, and then I've set their models to be a fighter, one of the cruisers, and set it to 2x2, and then the carrier, and I've set this to be 8x8, and then that is just a token that you can move around nice and easily. You can move it up and down just using the mouse wheel, that sort of thing. Nice and easy to use, nice and reasonably sized. So if you're going to be doing space battles and that sort of thing, I definitely recommend using tokens. But otherwise, these are sort of one-to-one scale tiles, I guess. As you can see, that's the size of a normal sort of square. This is very, very large. But yeah, that is a very quick look at what we'll be bringing this month. The biggest stuff I think we're working on is the optimization, the back end, which should, I think the biggest thing it's going to do is bring down the size of the module, but that'll be over the next couple of months, as we're working on it. In the meantime, new stuff should be smaller than previous stuff, and so we should just start seeing better and better performance going forward. Other than that, we've got this big expansion to our city set, and then also a massive set of spaceships for all your sci-fi needs what I'd love to know is what you guys think of them, and then how you guys get along with them, whether you find them easier to use, whether they are more performant than you might expect. And as ever, I'd appreciate the comments either down below or in the Discord. For now, though, I'll catch you all later.
Okay, for Dungeon Draft users, the Dungeon Draft, like all the dioramas, the terrain patches for Desert and Desolate stuff are all in here. I'll run through those. There is only inventory scenes here. I didn't have any of the unlimited trains in this release, so it was done in another file in a way that I can't really share it. But in any event, you've got all of your terrain patches. Again, if you have essential utils installed and you click on something, you can see where it came from, what pack it's in. But essentially, we have now a natural asset pack 04B, and that's where you'll find these because there's too much stuff to fit in the other one for size reasons. And you get all of your deserts, all of your terrain patches with caves, all of your rocky clearings, which there's just a ton of these, and they all merge together really well. They all scale up quite a bit. You're just looking at all these on one page, scale down a lot so I can fit them. But lots of the rocky tour, these are kind of the hilly type of terrains. Just a whole lot to work with. Here you've got kind of a continuation of the Tor Hills, then you've got all of the forest patches, your logs, your various boulders, trees and bushes, being colorable, of course. And then you've got some of the new green stuff that was added since last time. So you've got all these in here, all the green bushes, the colorable versions, and then your different boulders for mossy and regular. So overall, quite a few new assets, but these pieces are pretty huge. They scale up quite a bit. So have fun, everybody, making your maps with those, and let me know in the comments what you'd like to see next. I do have snowy terrains coming out next, so you see a lot of everything you just saw here in sort of snowy versions of it. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then let me know if there's other biomes that you guys would like to see us create. And that's it for the Dungeon Draft release. Okay, so that's it for the release for January. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope you enjoy everything that came out. There's going to be a bunch of really interesting things coming out later this year. DC20 is happening this year. Just lots and lots of stuff for you guys to look forward to. Let us know in the comments if there's anything you'd like us to create or cover, maybe modules or other things that you're curious about. And we'll certainly be covering the newest version of Foundry, version 13 here, doing a deep dive into that so that you guys have a resource going forward. And other than that, I hope you guys are well. I hope your year is already starting off on the right foot. Thanks for all of your support. And until we meet again, have fun making your maps.